As we get ready for class today, feel free to grab a pen and a paper, just something that you can, um, so that you can jot something down if you feel the urge or the need. Definitely have some kind of a pillow. I have yoga bolsters. These are great, but not required. Anything, just a pillow that you can kind of throw behind your head to help make you comfortable is fine. Um, and I think that's really it today. If you do have yoga blocks and you may want them for later, but you don't need them, certainly. I think we will do a Shavasana later on, just a bit later on. But so if you wanted to throw blocks in there, you could, but not necessary. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So I've actually filmed or recorded in this room before, but it looks probably a little different now because we've made some changes, and you'll see we have the yoga swing up and running. That's what those things behind me hanging down from the sky are. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting space. Hopefully someday other people will get to join us in the space. Who knows when that'll happen, but looks like it's coming soon, which is really exciting. So, as always, when you join for mindfulness, a couple of things to be aware of as we go through class. So, first, the mindfulness is a practice, and if we're going to get anything out of it, if we're going to use it as a tool for life advancement or enhancement or change or anything that, happiness, whatever it is, you're looking for more of, the only way to do that is to actually use the tool of mindfulness. But that can't be done unless we figure out how to actually apply it in our lives practically. So I ask, as we start things out, that you do these three basic things when you come to class. So the first thing that I'm asking you to do is try to stay, or to stay as long as you can, right? Not give in to the distraction, to pick up your phone and then see whatever you see on it and go, oh my God, I forgot, and get up and, bolt out the door to go do whatever it is that you forgot you needed to do. The idea is learning how to stay in one place and have those urges come up, like, I want to go do this other thing, but then not give into it. So that's the key. It's learning how to have an emotional experience and let it pass. So stay. See if you can't stay, right? We are so impulsive and reactive these days. So we're just constantly reacting to whatever's placed in front of us. And then we feel very helpless and powerless because of that. But it's us doing that to ourselves. We don't realize it. We haven't really been taught how not to do that. So that seems like the only answer, the only way. But that's not the only way at all. It's just a way to drive yourself crazy. And so, and to always feel victimized by life. And that's exactly what we're trying to undo. So learning how to stay and sit through discomfort, we're not going to torture you, but just a little bit so that you can kind of get to that next level, right? That's what it's always about. Just the little tiny wins that are ultimately going to add up to big things. So stay. That's sort of my ask of you, number one. My ask of you, number two, is that you pay attention to whatever it is that is going on in your mind while you pay attention to me. So the second ask is that you pay attention to me. And the reason that I ask you to do that is because while you're giving me your attention, a lot of really interesting things come to light for you. So it's a tool. As you're giving me your attention, you're learning how to do a number of things mindfully without even really realizing it or having to do very much other than just listen. And while you're doing that, the third thing that I'm going to ask you to do is be aware of what your mind is doing while you're trying to pay attention. So as you're giving me your attention, you'll maybe notice that you have a thought pop into your head. I don't like this black t-shirt that Sam is wearing, or there's this person I need to call later, or whatever it is. The idea is that you notice it. And that is the whole ball of wax, right? Is noticing what's going on inside your mind. So this is, again, another way to practice doing that, to practice learning how to hear yourself, which is everything in mindfulness. It's everything. It's everything. It's everything in change. So anytime you're trying to improve your life consciously, or make big changes, or do something bold and new and exciting, this is the way, right? Conscious awareness, becoming familiar with your inner blind spots and patterns is the way. So those are my 3 asks of you. And they're not always easy, and we're not going to always do them perfectly. And that's why, I guess this is actually 4 asks, but I don't usually think of it that way. The key is doing all of this non-judgmentally. So while you're paying attention and hear yourself being critical of me, being critical of you, being critical of, the world outside at large, instead of beating yourself up for being critical, recognizing that, that's interesting, right? That's interesting that I noticed that I'm more judgmental than I maybe thought that I was, or, being less quick to jump to make meaning out of something is really what we're talking about. But the easiest way to say that is just to watch for judgment. Watch for that, that criticism, that self-criticism, or that criticism of others. Just watch for it. Don't do anything else, right? Once you see it, that's fine. I'm just watch for it and then let it pass. So in any kind of mindfulness meditation or mindfulness exercise, the rule of thumb is to begin to think of your thoughts as a train, kind of, that you're watching pass you by. So you're at the train station and you're watching the train kind of, right, blow by you. The idea with mindfulness is that your thoughts are like that train, and instead of jumping on board and clinging to them, becoming, more involved in that line of thinking and going off the rails with it, can you just honor and acknowledge that you're having that thought, like, oh, there's that thought, and then let it pass. Now that sounds like an easy enough thing to do, but as many of you already know, right, it's not so easy to do. It's actually really hard to do. And that's for a number of reasons. Number one, because you have to catch yourself doing it. You have to become aware that you are in your head all day long thinking about all this stuff. That's not really helpful, but right, we're always moving too fast to see it. So that's one reason why or 2 reasons actually why it's really difficult. And there are so many, right? That's a lot of what we're going to talk about here, as we go on and learn more and more. But the idea is bringing this spirit, this non-judgmental spirit, into the moment, being able to kind of identify or catch that thoughts are kind of coming into your purview. Like, here's a thought. And then saying, you know what? I'm not going to get engaged in this right now. I'm going to let it go. If anybody here has ever smoked cigarettes or had an addiction that they tried to break or have successfully broken, it's actually very similar. It's pretty much exactly the same thing. So you have the thought, I want to go smoke a cigarette. You have the thought, I want to go get a cup of coffee, or whatever else you might think. But then there's a part of you that's like, you know what? No, this time I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it this time. So you don't get up and you don't act on that impulse to go smoke a cigarette or to go drink a cup of coffee or whatever else, right? So we're doing exactly the same thing. We're just doing it with our thinking. And most of us don't think or act this way. We never do this. So we're just used to giving into our impulses all day long. Now, that becomes extremely problematic and is a recipe for misery for everyone. There's no one that gets to try to approach life that way and succeed in a happy-go-lucky way, right? That's just not a recipe for happiness. So, as some of you already know, and hence why we're all here, right? So, having said all that, we're going to start today with a breathing exercise. Now, let me just say, with any breath exercise that we ever do, if it's too uncomfortable, if you get really lightheaded, you can always lay down or just take a break, right? These are suggestions. It's, very common that breath manipulation can, cause you to feel high or to feel really lightheaded. And in some cases, you know, it takes a minute. I've seen people get headaches after, 30-minute breath exercises or whatever it is because of feeling really out of it for a longer period of time. So this can be hard. And if you are starting to feel uncomfortable in any way, don't don't keep doing it, right? Just take a time out. That's totally fine. It doesn't mean that you didn't win or didn't do it right. It just means that you're, you know, got to build up a tolerance like with anything. So this is, I'll pull this up so you can actually see it. Let me share this with you. It is called Holotropic Breathwork. And this is began in the 70s as I actually think he was maybe a Russian psychologist. I know I should know, but I forget what his name actually is. Who kind of started to use these breath techniques in to help people to change, to get into altered states of consciousness. So the idea with this kind of holotropic breath work is, let me see if I can share it to you with you. For some reason, my screen is not cooperating. There we go. The idea is that we are kind of creating a feeling of being high a little bit. So we're trying to create that feeling here. And so that's why I'm saying, and particularly with this exercise, if you should start to feel uncomfortable, please take 5 minutes, take a time out, no big deal. So this particular exercise also I've seen it done by Buddhist monks and other sort of in spiritual circles. It's used, and different offshoots of this can be found all over the place in different types of nuanced types of exercise or different disciplines in even in aerobics, right? So it's out there. But I think you'll find that you feel pretty energized afterwards. And it's just I like it, and I'm showing it to you because it's a really easy and quick way to dramatically change how you feel at any given time. And that's what this is all about, right? I mean, at the end of the day, our job in every moment is to try to release or let go of those negative thoughts and emotions that we've developed habits around over the course of our lifetimes. So, and I'm not saying that negative thoughts and emotions are bad by any stretch. What I'm saying is they're no longer helpful. And right, so if we're going to learn how to engage with our lives differently, instead of being super reactive all the time and feeling like we're kind of getting beat up by life, right, or whatever life throws in front of us, if we're going to become more deliberate, if we're going to be, in charge of our own lives, the governors of our experience, we've got to develop these tools to learn how to let go of negative thoughts and emotion as they emerge in real time. Now, some of you already know this. As you start to feel better and better, you kind of become more intolerant of those feelings. It sort of feels really wrong when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. It's like, whoa, something's wrong. This doesn't feel right? It's really hard to take, as you kind of get better and better at feeling better, which is ironic, right? But that's what happens. We feel good so much of the time that feeling bad truly does not feel right. It feels like something is really wrong. And that's a good thing. But when those moments happen, because they will, because we're human, having these kind of little tools in our tool belt pull to go to jump on are invaluable. I mean, they are really important. Now, especially if you're someone who's had any kind of history with mental health or with mental illness or some kind of diagnoses, um, you might be prone to depression. So, the thing that you should note about the way that the brain works is once it's done something once, it is more likely to do it again. So for those people that have ever had seizures, maybe because they forgot to take their medication for a few days, or maybe because of a concussion or whatever it is, a sport or whatever causes seizures. Once that's happened once, it's much more likely that your body's going to repeat that experience. It's sort of, that's like one of the basic laws of the way that the body is organized. So the problem is, right, once we engage in once we engage in a habit of depression or anxiety at any point in the past, and let's say, look, all of us have experienced some form of depression. I think back to being in middle school and being dumped, right, or whatever, right? Some boy that I had known for 5 minutes broke up with me, and I was devastated, like didn't want to get out of bed, right? Like it was terrible. But that would go on for, right, weeks and then months, just waking up every day and, oh, he doesn't care about me, life isn't worth living, whatever, right? The craziness that a 14-year-old girl can conjure into her mind. But that is what depression is, right? Depression is being stuck in a habit, a negative habit and pattern of sad and angry thoughts and emotion. And with if you wake up every day and you keep thinking about something that makes you really sad, I guarantee you that after 6 months, you will meet the criteria for depression. That is what depression is and how it's diagnosed. So if that's happened to you once, you're a lot more likely to experience that, even if it's years later, again. So why did I just say that? Because if you're someone who's had those types of tendencies in the past, even years ago, if you're not vigilant with your deliberate effort to let go of negative thoughts and emotion, it isn't going to take much. It's only a matter of time before we get swept back into those types of habits and patterns, because that's our nature. We've developed that as our nature. It didn't start out as our nature, by the way. That's not what we were born with, per se, right? It's how we developed over time, and now it has become a part of how our body reacts to its world, right? So the point is, I'm basically trying to advocate here for people being more willing to do something when they don't feel good. If you don't feel happy, if you don't feel satisfied, if you don't feel good, or you feel really anxious, that's not something to just sit on and like kind of bulldoze through. Release it. What can I do to release the negative emotion? Now, I want to be very clear here, because this has come up a lot this week. I'm talking about releasing negative emotion, not adding positive emotion. And they're very different things. So a few weeks ago, I had a client say to me, and I might have even mentioned this, hey, Sam, why is it that, every therapist I've ever had has told me to do positive affirmations, but they never work? And I sort of chuckled a little bit because, yeah, sure, positive affirmations are great if you're someone who doesn't need them. right like if I've been at this, if I've been doing this kind of mindfulness work, the kind of things that I'm teaching you about for the last 15 years, yeah, great, positive affirmations are great. But if somebody's got 8 months sober from a freaking crack cocaine addiction or whatever it is, right, or who's coming off of a long history with mental illness, of course you can't do a positive affirmation because it's too unrealistic. It's too far away from where I am right now. And in fact, positive affirmations can then be dangerous because, and you all know from your experience, right? What happens when somebody really happy comes up to you when you're really sad or really angry and says, "Oh, come on, cheer up. Look, you've got this great life," right? you kind of want to beat them up, right? And so then you start defending your position. You start coming up with more reasons why it is that you should feel bad. Because, and that's again, it's another law about how the brain and body are organized, or how we're designed. So we're not looking to add positive thoughts here. We're looking to release or let go of, right? Just let go of the negative ones. Now, how do we do that? We do that by no longer giving them our attention. And because we can only give one thing our attention at a time, no matter how good you think you are at multitasking, you can only give your one thing your attention at a time. So if I'm stuck in a really, if I'm stuck in a cycle of negative thoughts and emotion, or if I'm moving into that space, or if I'm really having a hard time letting go of a mood that I'm in, it's really important that in that space we learn how to shift our attention and look somewhere else, and just be willing to let go of the negative emotion. Don't look at it anymore. So, right, another example of this, many of you know that I've had this very difficult relationship with the news, right, over the last 6 years or so. Right. In the past, I had to go on a year, I guess it was like a 2-year long news blackout, where, for the first year, it was pretty much 100% news blackout. And then in the second year, it slowly picked back up. And now, of course, it has come back. Now I'm back to watching the news routinely, but I'm a lot more careful about when I call it quits. So I'll let myself watch for 15 minutes, right? And then I'll say, you know what? Nope, I'm feeling myself getting upset or angry or sad or whatever it is. I'm letting go of this. I'm not going to put it on. Nope, I'm not doing it. Because the consequences, you guys, are serious here. This is not a joke, right? I know it sounds like I'm, giving a silly example about the news, but what happens when we start to give something that makes us really unhappy our full attention, particularly something we deem unjust or injustice? It really is hard for us to walk away from. And so we think more about it, and we think about it, and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger, right? Now, because of the way that the brain is organized, if I'm filled with a sense of injustice and the world is unfair, and negative emotion, anger and sadness and frustration and indignation and entitlement, now I have created a filter that is exactly how I experience not just this one thing that's going on right now, me watching the news, but everything, as I then turn to go engage with my life. And that's where real problems start to, very serious problems start to emerge. So this is very serious stuff. And hopefully over time, you'll start to see these sort of habits and patterns playing out in your life, so you can really make some profound changes. So this exercise is designed to be utilized at the point where you recognize, oh shit, I don't like the way I feel. Oh shit, I'm starting to feel angry, or I'm starting to feel sad. Something's going on. That's not, that's not the moment where we start going, why am I feeling this way? Why? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, right? No, that's what we used to maybe do. Now what we're doing is, I don't want to keep doing this, so I'm going to do something else. And that's where we would introduce this type of breath exercise. So let's get into a comfortable position. Now, with this particular exercise, getting into a comfortable position is really important. So if you prefer to be lying down, lie down. If you prefer to be seated up against a wall, sit up against a wall. Wherever, however, if you want to be in a chair with your feet flat on the ground, that's fine. On a floor, on a mat, whatever. You can sit on a block. Actually, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a block and sit on that, because that is just more comfortable for me. Oh, hold on one second. Girls, no. I'm in a class. Sorry, you guys, little girls. All right, so I'm going to sit on this and hopefully get yourselves comfortable, right? Now, I'm just going to quickly, and you can see it on the screen, I'm going to quickly give you how this goes, but then I will help you through as we go through it. We'll do it together. So it's going to we start with 30, it's called power breaths. Now, if you've done any kind of like Kundalini, it's not that. We're not doing breath of fire or anything like that. All we're really doing is taking a deep, deep breath in and exhale. So it's like we're filling up our lungs down to our bellies and then exhaling like a balloon. That's why I'm doing this, right? We're inhaling all the way into like the bottom of our stomachs and then exhaling all that air out. So it's now I inhale and exhale through my nose for this. That's just my nature after many years of yoga, but you do not have to. You can inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth if that's more comfortable for you. That's totally fine. There's, apples to apples here. So, so we're going to do that together. We're going to do 30 of those, right? Then we're going to exhale and hold ourselves empty. And I'm gonna, it's not gonna be quite a full minute. That's suggested, but I'll probably get as close as I can. So we're gonna exhale and then just kind of hold without taking another breath. So we're gonna have our lungs completely emptied and sit. And then we're gonna take a nice, deep, slow, long breath in, fill our lungs way up, and then hold it for about 10 seconds. Then we're going to release that, take a couple of regular breaths and do it again. Okay? So if you have no idea what I just said, that's fine. I'm going to walk you through it and that's totally cool. So here we go. Sit up nice and tall. Okay. So we're going to begin now. Inhale through the nose. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Now go at your own pace. Now, if you should keep, starting to feel really lightheaded and, like you're going to pass out, just stop, right? Just pause. Totally fine. And if you feel okay, keep going. But, take a moment and then jump back in when you can. Almost there. Last one. Okay, now we're going to take one more breath, deep breath in. Exhale it all out. Now hold. Just hold. Emptied. Your lungs should be fully emptied out. And just be still. No need to panic. No need to get excited. If you can't hold for 60, you just breathe whenever you need to. A little bit longer. Okay. Slow, deep breath in through the nose. Filling the lungs all the way up, all the way up, 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 up. Hold, hold, hold. And release. Okay, so how do you feel? Feel different? Feel the same? If you feel like we're going to do another round of that. So if you feel like you need to change your position, you want to take the block away, you want to move up against the wall because you got a little too lightheaded, or you want to lay down, please, that's fine. Go right ahead. Okay, we're going to get started. Here we go. We're going to breathe in through the nose and exhale. Breathe in, exhale. Breathe in, exhale. Breathe in and exhale. Go at your own pace. Now, this is the perfect kind of thing, keep it going, where you want to be paying attention to your thinking, right? What are your thoughts doing right now? Are they panicking? Do you feel yourself getting worried? Do you feel calm? How do you feel? What are you thinking about? Are you trying to disassociate, right? And think about anything but what's going on right now? Just notice it, right? It's all good. Okay, last couple here. Okay, exhale it all out. Now we're going to hold. And again, if you need to take a breath, that's fine. Just, take a breath and then jump back in. Hold for 15 seconds if that's all you can do. That's totally fine. Or just whatever you do, don't panic. No need to panic. You just hang on, hang out here, do the best that you can. Okay, breathe in slowly through the nose and hold it. Exhale it all out. Okay. May want to take a nice deep breath there. Okay, what did you notice? How do you feel? How did that go? What was that like for you? Now, you might be able to see right away why this kind of breathing exercise would very quickly neutralize negative emotion. So it's designed for that. When someone tells you that there's a breath exercise that is designed to change your state of consciousness, right? That's designed to put you in an altered state of consciousness, that means eviscerate negative emotion. That's what it means it's designed to do. Now, how it does that, right? Everybody has a different sort of tolerance for these types of breath exercises. So in the beginning, people can get very panicky, can feel anxious. I know people that still, are horrified by the one time they were made to do a breath of fire because it panicked them, right? They can't breathe, they can't breathe. And of course, when we mess with breathing, with our breath, right, we start to become aware of it, we start to notice it, it can trip the wiring for anxiety, for our fight or flight system, and that's totally normal. So your job in that exercise, again, is just to calm the body down. Is just to say to yourself, it's fine, there's no fire here, I'm just engaging in this breath exercise, there's no emergency, and I can just take a breath at any time. I can just go back to my normal way of breathing and take a break and jump out and jump back in. If you've ever done a Kundalini yoga class, if you haven't, I recommend one when we get back to, I guess you can do it virtually, but ideally with Kundalini, it's nice to do it with a big group of people. It's really hard. I mean, it's really hard for the best of us. It is really hard to do, and it's extraordinarily challenging. But the whole thing is designed to do exactly this, exactly to eviscerate negative emotion and bring you into these kind of higher level altered states. So this is a great basic beginner breath exercise to do just that. So I would write this one down, or email or text me if you want me to send it to you. It's very helpful. And again, we use it to eviscerate negative emotion. That's what it's all about. Now, there are people that will do this for a half hour. I don't necessarily suggest that you do this for a half hour unless you are with a professional or really feel like you've built your tolerance to that amount of time. But you may do it for 5 to 10 rounds, right? You might do it laying down because it can get you really, really lightheaded. And so to do it a little bit longer, you can't, it's harder to do seated like this or against a wall, like I said earlier. But it's definitely a really helpful exercise for getting rid of negative emotion. Now, people have said this to me, and I know this can be a little confusing, so I'm going to mention it to you here. People have said to me, hold on one second, guys. Just want to make sure that, yeah, okay. People have said, Sam, are you saying that to feel bad is bad? Now, I want to be very clear here. No, feeling bad is, having moments where we don't feel our best is, of course, a very normal part of life. But what this is not about judging our emotional life, right? It's about learning how to take back the ship. Because what so many of us don't realize is that we've really turned our lives over to chance. We've said, in order to feel good, everything that I ever come into contact with has to serve me well, right? So every light that I ever come to, every crosswalk that I ever come upon, every person that I ever meet, every movie I ever watch has to be to my liking, to my specific, needs at that moment. But that's really what we've done. We've said that life is only going to be good. My life is only going to be, make me happy if I can, manipulate the circumstances in every single moment to my liking. Now, we started off with a faulty premise because the truth is that's impossible. And even if you could do it, even if it was possible, which it isn't, but even if it was, even if you could manipulate every single moment of your life and, in terms of the environment, it still couldn't make you happy, right? It's just not possible because that's not how we were designed. We're not designed to be happy from the outside in. We're designed to be happy from the inside out, right? So we're designed to feel good and then go live our lives and make stuff. If you think about your life as a blank canvas, that's what it's all about. So this is all about, everything we're talking about here is not about this is good and this is bad. No, it's about saying, I'm trying to learn how to live my life in a new way without being a victim all the time. Because if I think that the only way to be happy is to always have the environment, set up to my liking and my very specific needs in that moment, then I'm going to feel really disempowered and very out of control and very victimized by life all the time. Whether it's somebody walking slowly in front of me on the street or my significant other saying something that I don't like I'm just never going to be able to get through a day without being miserable. And that's, of course, the mistake that many of us have made, right? We thought, well, I have to have this perfect career to make me happy. I have to have the big house or this kind of family, or whatever it is. We thought when we got all those things, then we would be happy. And the reality is that those kinds of things are great, but they're never going to make you happy, because that's not the design. That's not how we were built. So along the same lines today, what I wanted to talk about is something called an attractor. An attractor, like attractive people, but attractor. The idea is, I can't give myself something I don't have. So, and I'm going to give you an example. So babies are born with the ability to make every sound that has ever been uttered by every language that has ever been spoken across humanity, right? So when a baby comes into this world, it has the capacity to recognize and mold itself to any sound sequence that you can put in front of it. Now, why would that be, right? As we know, so that if I wanted to, if I was going to adopt a child on the other side of the world, right, from some obscure, very small island somewhere that no one's ever heard of, that baby could come to wherever I am and learn my language, right? So it's a survival, it's an adaptation, but what happens is, very soon after the baby is born and starts to be exposed to this language, the language of their caregivers, they lose the ability to use those other sounds that are not relevant or not important to the language that they are learning to speak. So in Japanese, there's no distinction between the letters R and L, right? So if you were in Japan and speaking English, they do not, if you were to say the word right or light, they hear them the same way. They do not have the ability to hear the difference between those two letters because of how their brain has adapted to the language that they speak. Right. Now, this is just one example. There are probably billions across all of our languages, but it's an important example. Now, so in studies that were done, this was a study that was done very specific for very important reason to us, believe it or not, to try to discern what it would take to learn to be able to identify the difference between the R and the L. So the exercise was looking at kind of how we develop, right? Some way that our system has adapted to its world completely. So a Japanese born speaking person cannot tell the difference between the word right and light. And what they found was, if they were, they did a lab experiment and had two different groups, right? They had three groups, but two groups that they were manipulating the variables for. And one of them was exposed to regular conversations. So just like we're talking, right? Regular English speaking conversations, and they still couldn't hear it, right? They could not hear when they were listening or observing people talking in English and just normal banter. They couldn't hear it. The only way that they discovered that this group of people were able to learn to hear the difference between the R and the L was by specifically attending to it, by saying, here's the R, here's the L. Say it with me. Right, whatever it is, taking a light bulb and saying light, 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 right, over and over again. However, in other words, by being very specific about the target objective. So this is the point. The only so not only did it have to be specifically, in other words, they were forced to do something that was extremely difficult to do, They would never have been able to do it on their own. They would never have been able to do it by just observing, by moving to this country and just observing other English speaking people. Would never have happened. They were not able to hear a difference. So in order for them to learn to speak it differently, it had to be something that they were intending to do. I'm going to tell the difference between an R and an L, right? And then practice, 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 practice for up to 5 years, right? For years in some cases. Now, why is this important to us? And what does this have to do with the word attractor? The reason and the principle behind this idea is what we call an attractor. It has to do with very specific brain chemistry, the types of neurotransmitters, and how they operate. The way that the brain operates is it sometimes makes these sweeping generalizations, right? It's all about efficiency. We talked about this before. The brain operates on a principle of efficiency. So it's always looking for like the fastest or the path of least resistance, the easiest way to achieve an outcome, right? So when you walk into a room, you've got 100 bazillion different bits of stimulation and information coming at you. Your brain calculates all of the information that you've ever experienced prior to this moment, and then uses that information to encode or make sense of where you are now, right? So for our Japanese speaking folks who come over to the US and are, maybe living here now, right? They are trying to learn the English language, right? And so, right, and in trying to learn the English language, they're trying to take on something that was foreign to them, right? Learn how to do something they don't know how to do that's completely foreign. What happens though is because to a Japanese speaker, the R and the L are so similar to the brain in their language, right? Based on their the pieces of how the Japanese language is formed, the brain kind of rounds up. It doesn't hear the difference between the R and the T, or the R and the L, excuse me, because they're so close in a Japanese speaking person's mind that the brain keeps rounding up, going to the average, right? And ignoring the L and saying, no, it's R, it's right? Makes sense? So an attractor is essentially, it's like if we have 58 cents, you might round up to 60. Someone says, how much change do you have? You say 60 cents, about 60 cents, right? Instead of 58. But sometimes there is a very big difference between the 58 and the 60, or the R and the L. Now, what I'm trying, the main point here that I really want you to understand. Now, these attractor neurons are responsible for how we perceive our world. And the truth is that the way that we perceive our world now is completely and utterly based on how we've experienced it in the past. That is the work of attractor neurons. Here's the main point though, and this is really important. This is why like self-help books by themselves cannot help you. Just kind of funny, right? But they can't, not possible. Self-help books can't help you. Why not? Because, or just read, I should say it that way. That's not true. Just reading a self-help book and expecting to change can't help you. And that's because you cannot give yourself something you do not have. If I'm a Japanese born speaker and I try to learn English, I cannot teach myself to distinguish between an R and an L. It is not possible. I didn't say that it's not like possible. It is not possible. It's not possible. I can't see it. Because to me, every time someone says either right or light, it's the same. They sound exactly the same. Right? Is this making sense? Hopefully it is. So, and the reason that I'm bringing this up here to you is because I want you to understand that change is really challenging, and it requires a very specific formula. You need outside information in order to be able to do it. Because we all have what I call, and you've heard me say it before, blind spots. We have those blind spots because of our attractors, because of the way that our brain has organized itself over all of the years of our lives, right? It's just the difference. That's the difference between me and you, you and another person. We've grown into the person that we are, largely shaped by how we see what we've experienced before, and then how we bring that into what we're seeing now, right? So life becomes the sum total of our perception, or the way that we experience the world around us. But it's not the world around us that's inherently there's no objectivity, there's no place that is separate from you or me, right? It's only in your world. There's no way to become objective. There is only your world. Now, this goes into a whole other tangent, and I don't want to go there right now. What I want you to hear is that there are 4 ingredients to change, and they're all important. So the first is obvious. You have to have a desire, because this is so hard. For most people that come from Japan, does it really matter to them enough to practice learning the R and the T for 5 years? Probably not, right? Or sorry, the R and the L. I don't know why I keep saying T. Probably not, right? Probably it's not that important, but for some it might be. And then they're willing to put the work in. So desire is always a key ingredient. It's number 1, because if I don't care enough about something, the fact of the matter is I'm not going to do it. Now, this comes up all the time in psychology and in therapy, because, I'll work with younger individuals, let's say 15-year-old teenagers, 15-year-old, and the parent will say, well, is it that they can't do their homework, or is it that they won't do their homework? Right. So let's say I have a 15-year-old who has some kind of attention deficit disorder. And at the end of the day, what I'll say to that parent is, it doesn't matter, because they end up the same place. Whether it's because he can't or he won't, he's not, and he's not going to. So we have to accept he's not doing it and find another solution, right? So if I don't care enough about something, I'm not going to do it. So we have to have desire. We have to really want whatever is on the other side of that change. Number 2, we have to have outside information. It has to be an open feedback loop. Now, many of us, we don't like that. We don't want to bring other people in. We want to try to do everything ourselves. But when it comes to change, that is just not possible, as I said, because of the way that our tractors are organized, and because of the way that our perception works. There's just no way for us to see that which we can't see, right? There's just no way to do that. So we need outside information. We need new information. We need somebody else who's done it before us to come in and say, hey, this is the way. This is what you need to do. And oh, you know what? I can see it. I see what you're doing that's not helping you. And I see that you could do it this way and that would help you. So outside information is critical. Now, I'm not saying you need to run out and get a therapist, right? That's great, good. That's one way. There are other ways to do it, but the point is it's going to take action, and it's going to take bringing something you don't have now into your sphere. Now, I should tell you that on my journey, I did it not with a therapist or another person, but with tons of hours of going online, searching YouTube, reading books, watching speaker after speaker after speaker. And I mean, just thousands of hours of learning and being self-taught. But in that example, I went out and, heard or watched or listened to whatever person I was learning from, and then tried it, went out and did what I was being taught or told was a helpful resource. So it was a 2-step process that served very similar to how it would be if I was working with a person one-on-one. The problem though is it takes a lot longer because it's the blind leading the blind. I don't know what I'm supposed to be. There's no path yet. I'm just carving my own path, right? And that's how I wound up being able to help other people to do it, because I just took me years to do it on my own. And that's exactly what I don't want you to have to do. I don't want you to have to do it on your own because it takes forever. And why should it take that long when there's a very clear, when there's a way, like there's a path, right? So anyway, that's why outside information is so critical. Now, the third thing is we have to focus. And this is part of what the definition of mindfulness is about and why I'm always bringing this up every time we start our mindfulness class. So often we take our eye off the ball. It's like if you've ever been on a diet, that first like 10 days or 1 week, you start out so strong and it's like you're just doing so great. You feel good and you're proud of yourself. And then you wake up on day 11 or whatever it is, and you get distracted. Something happens, right? Maybe you have a weekend, a friend coming to stay with you for the weekend. What happens? Well, that's no longer the centerpiece, right? You moved the marker. Now we're looking over here, and that thing is no longer as important. So what do? Naturally, a guest is in town. Oh, I can cheat today, and right. And then 3 days later, we decided, screw it, who cares, right? So it's a lot like when we're trying to make concerted effort to change something in our lives for the better. It's a lot like if you were driving in your car and put into your GPS, I want to go from here to Houston, Texas. And you set out to go and you get in and you plug in the address and you're on your way. And then like 20 minutes in, you're like, you know what? I don't know if I want to go to Houston. Let's go to Tampa, Florida. So you change the GPS. Well, if you keep operating that way, you're never going to get anywhere. I mean, frankly, right? But that's how most people are all day, every day. They're not, waking up and saying, all right, these are the things I want to accomplish today. They're waking up and then just, in damage control, just dealing with or reacting to whatever's put in front of them. And, that is obviously, you don't get anywhere. You never achieve your goal because you're just always being, distracted or putting your attention on whatever the loudest thing in your environment is at that time, right? Wherever the drama is, which, you see it happening everywhere. So remember that you've got to keep it front and center. If you want any kind of big payout, no matter what it is, if you want a different kind of relationship, if you want to meet the person of your dreams, if you want to make more money, if you want to find your career, whatever it is, you're not going to, if you say, okay, this is what I want, and then, 20 minutes later, start to move in a different direction, or I should say it differently. Let's say that we're working on those things and I give you a series of exercises to do in order to get those things, right? And then after like a week, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do those exercises anymore. Well, I'm here to tell you that those exercises, when you do them, you are moving inch by inch closer to the thing that you want. When you don't do them, you can't get there, right? Because of these attractors, because of that whole thing with the Japanese R and L sounds, you can't get there. Because, right, let's be honest, look around. If you're, 40 years old like I am, if I don't have something, the way that if I've never had a successful relationship, newsflash, it's probably not something that I know how to do, right? So what am I can keep trying, but all the ways that I've always tried have always produced where I am now. So why would I keep doing the same things over and over again? But that's how a lot of us approach everything in our lives, right? So you get it. You get the point. Now, finally, and this is the last one, and I know I'm late, I'm running over time. The last one is discipline. And what I mean by discipline is being willing to do something even when you don't want to. Being willing to get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, put on your running shoes and go for a run. Now, I'm not saying that you need to do that, right? Whether or not you ever go running a day in your life doesn't matter to me. But the fact that somebody is willing to do that, despite the fact that it's cold out or that it's raining or whatever, that their is bothering them, that is what discipline is all about. And having the willingness to sort of, trudge through the difficulty is such a critical element to change. Because when the going gets tough, and it will get tough, you're going to have to get disciplined. And I'll be honest, I don't have any discipline, none. It is not something I was born with. It is not something that I have a lot of even now after all these years. But if I really want something, right, and I know how this is how many of us are. If we really want something, we're gonna, God damn it, we're gonna get it, right? We're going for it. And that's where discipline comes in. We're gonna have to use, whether we want to do it or not, we're gonna have to do it anyway. So, okay, I'm over time. We didn't get to do our Shavasana. So what I would really strongly encourage, if you have a few minutes, is to do it yourself. Now, the exercise that I was going to give you, and you don't have to do it now, you can do it a different time, maybe later today or tomorrow, whatever, but the exercise itself is to set a timer, and is to really try to do at least, if you're used to doing 10 minutes, I would try 15. If you're used to doing 15, do 20. If you're used to doing 2, do 4. Challenge yourself here. What I want you to try to do is be still. So just laying down, right? Flat on the floor. If you need a pillow to underneath your knees or your back of your neck, just laying down, really, right? I don't particularly care in this exercise where you are. The point is to be comfortable, but the point is to not move. Now, many people don't realize this, but every time you are thinking, you're moving. So if I'm watching a group of people meditating, I know exactly who's having a hard time because, right, quieting their mind, because they're moving. They don't even know it most of the time. So one way that we can help our brain to quiet down first is to close the eyes, because the eyes bring in so much information into our occipital lobe, into our brain, that it's flooding. The brain activity triples just by opening your eyes, right? But when you close your eyes, that quiets down. So close your eyes, about a minute or so later, you start to feel a little bit better, right? You start to quiet down just a little bit. Now, if you can get comfortable and make an effort not to move, you will not disrupt. you will add in your ability to quiet your mind. When you keep moving, it's like you're stirring the pot, right? It's like if we had a jar of water and dirt in it, right? And every time we move, we shake it up, and then it's going to take time for everything to settle back down to the bottom, but then we move and we shake it up again. Well, that's how your brain works when inside your body. So if I'm moving around a lot, right, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. In fact, tossing and turning, that's sort of the staple image of not being able to sleep at night. So my sort of challenge to you is, can you challenge yourself to quietly, so lay quietly. If you have a sound that you like, feel free to use the sound. That's totally fine with me. Just breathing, laying down, and trying not to react, not to move. And this, again, is not only training you on how to quiet your mind and how to be more likely to quiet your mind, but how to deal with discomfort, right? There's a saying that one of my dearest friends and fellow yogis says and got me saying, and it really stuck with me. And it's, if I can, I must. If I can, I must. And what that means is, if I'm applying it to this conversation, if I'm laying there and there's that voice that inevitably comes into my mind that says, all right, screw this. You've got so much to do. Why don't you just get up? Fuck this. You can do this later, right? Just get up. It's been 2 minutes. That's better than nothing. Get up. This other part of me says, Okay, I hear you and I know you're uncomfortable right now. I know you want to get up. So I'm just going to take a deep breath in and then I'm going to exhale that thought out. I'm going to let it pass. And if in 2 minutes from now, I'm still feeling the same way, then I will get up. Learning how to let go of resistance, learning how to have a thought and then an urge, an impulse, not give into it. Let me tell you how powerful that is. It is incredibly empowering to realize that you do not have to give in to all of your impulses. And I know that sounds maybe silly to say, right? But in fact, it is quite powerful when, and it's all relative. Some of us are more impulsive than others, but generally speaking, because of technology and because of our phones, we've all gotten very impulsive, right? We're all very reactive. We pick up our phones and we respond to it. It's whatever I was intending to do when I picked it up doesn't matter anymore. I picked it up and now someone texts me, instead of doing what I was going to do, I'm doing what they want me to do. So it's sort of a metaphor, right? If you think about it on a larger scale, can I, when I have that phone in front of me, can I learn how to say, no, I'm not going to respond to so and so right now. I'm going to continue to do what I wanted to do and why I picked this phone up to begin with. And then I will respond to so and so. Very different approach to life. So, okay, thank you so much for your time and attention. And as always, I so hope this is helpful for you. I so appreciate you giving me your attention. And if you have any questions, as always, text or email. Good luck, be well, and I will see you next Thursday. Bye.